Hello, friends. Trisha Goyer here. We're talking about books. We're talking to awesome authors. And today, my guest is Jen Turano. And Jen, I am so glad that you are back with me. It is always so much fun chatting with you.
Thank you so much for having me on this release day.
It's
I've
a
never
release
done
day.
right. I've never done a release or a live broadcast on an actual release day. So this is a first for me.
We
Thank
should
you for
have,
having me.
yeah, we should have done like confetti or something. I
Mhm.
don't know.
Balloons.
Something. We'll
Hmm.
just pretend. We'll just pretend we
Right.
have confetti like falling on us. Yay! So we're talking about the release of this book, which we'll be talking about in a second to spark a match. So many good things to say about this. But first, Jen, before we start talking about the book, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am. I have been married to Al forever, over 30 years. We met in October a long, long time ago, and we got married in May. And everyone said it would never last.
Oh, you proved him wrong.
Yes. And so we have one son, Dominic. He is out of the house. He's an engineer and he just took a new job. So I live outside of Denver. And
Mhm.
Dominic lives in Denver right now in the Capitol Hill district, but he just took a new job and he's going to be moving to Idaho. Mhm.
Oh, wow. Do you like
Yeah,
Idaho? Are you going to visit him in Idaho?
of course. But he's not like a really like emotionally attached child.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm sure he will let me visit. It's just probably not going to be that often. But he does a lot of traveling, so and I think some of his business is going to be in Denver. So it's all good.
Yeah,
Mhm.
good. I know. They grow up and then they move away and yeah,
They
but
do.
it's exciting that he's doing well and he has a great job and so
It is exciting. So and yes, he is my only child. And let's see what else can I tell you. I majored in fashion. So I get that a lot. Most people just figure I majored in English. I did not. I majored in fashion. I used to be a buyer, and then I used to manage a department store in New York. That's why you find so many department stores in
Mhm.
my stories because I love those old fashioned department stores. And then once I had Dominic, I decided that, well, my husband and I decided I had done a lot of traveling and my hours were really bad that I would be a stay at home mom. So I turned into a stay at home mom. That was interesting. And then I started writing when Dominic was in third grade. And I just wrote a story. We wrote a story together, and I never intended on getting published or anything, but I just kind of liked using my brain. So it just kind of went from there.
I
Here
love
I
it.
am.
I love that it was not something like maybe you dreamt about as a child or I mean, did you as a child think about I'm going to be an author someday or ever have those ambitions?
I did not. My siblings are annoyingly accomplished. Um, so my like one of my brothers is a surgeon, two of my other
Mhm.
brothers are engineers, my other sister is a nurse, and then I have one sister who is a CPA accountant, but then she was bored and she went back and got her law degree. So now she's an attorney. And then you have me, majored in fashion. So in my family, I mean, it was odd that I majored in fashion, to tell you the truth. I think my dad was appalled, but he was just excited that I finally decided to go to college because I really wanted to go just after high school, go off to New York City and become a makeup artist.
Mm.
So, so he said, okay, fashion was okay. He figured there was a little math involved because I wanted to be a buyer,
Yeah.
right?
Right.
It's basic math. It's pretty much addition. There we go. So in my family, no, like we didn't. The arts weren't promoted, but I was always different. I've always been the black sheep of my family, and I always lived in my imagination. So I've
Mhm.
always had stories going through my head. And this is going to date me, but when I was younger, I used to ride one of the bicycles with the handlebars and the banana seats. I would.
I had one of those too with a little
Did you have one
dustbin
of
cart.
those?
I'm 52. I will just say I'm 52. I think we're right around the same age probably.
Could be a little bit older than you, but we're just but so yeah, I would ride that around and I would literally talk to myself and I would create these stories. So I've always had an imagination. So, if I had not been born into such basically a science oriented family, that probably would have been, I would have been encouraged to pursue my artistic side. Because I also draw, and I've
Mm.
taken a lot of art classes, which again is weird in my family. So, but then when I finally did, and I always excelled like with writing papers in English, and but it just never entered my head.
Mhm.
So I finally found my spot, and it's turned into a great second career, and here I am.
I love that. It's like you said about second career, it is like 2 lives. I
Mhm.
mean, buyer, New York, department stores, that sounds so cool. But this is like you're able to use all that creativity and imagination and definitely build out the world of the books. And you do there's fashion and there's well, in this one, we'll talk about this series, the Matchmaker series, The Match in the Making was the first one, and then To Spark a Match. So this is about a matchmaker and all the interesting things that happen in the books. But there's gowns and there's balls and there's high society. So definitely the fashion that first career in a world that you lived in definitely shows up in this book, which makes it exciting, makes it come alive within the pages. So I love that.
Oh, thank you. Well, yeah, the fashion is a big thing. I actually know how to make a course. I have made a corset before in one of my
Wow.
advanced tailoring classes, but I am not a seamstress. So those are like I had to take flat pattern design, and yes, we made a corset. I've made a bustle before.
Mm,
So so I understand the workings of them. I
yeah.
would never do that again. I am horrible on a sewing machine. I have one. When we had COVID and when we had to make our own masks before, they you could buy them. Oh, it was they were horrible. Like it just was like this big thing of material. And I remember one of my friends was like, didn't you take like advanced tailoring in college? And yes, I did. Yes, but I'm not. I don't excel at sewing. But yeah, I love the department stores, and that's why I love writing in the Gilded Age, but within the New York 400 because it's very high fashion, and it just kind of gives. Yeah, so my past life does kind of play into everything.
Yeah. So tell us about this series, and then we'll talk about specifically about this book after we hear just a little bit about the series.
Okay, so it's the Matchmaker series, and I've been wanting to do a Matchmaker series for years. I don't know, like I have a box where I put all of my ideas,
Oh yeah.
for future series. Like something I'll run across something in research. I'm like, oh, that'd be fun. And I did. I actually had like 5 post-it notes that said you need to do a Matchmaker series, and they were just in this big box, and I didn't get around to it. But I'm like, I think it's time to do the Matchmaker series. So the first book in the series was A Match in the Making, this
Yeah.
one, and this is Gwendolyn Brindley. And so I wanted to start it off. I wanted it to be a different kind of matchmaking series. So Gwendolyn was not supposed to be a matchmaker. She was supposed to be a paid companion. Um, and her employer, don't ask me what her name was. I have no idea. But she breaks her leg in a three-legged race, and so Gwendolyn has to step up and fulfill these duties of matchmaker. And so that was just super fun. And then in this story, I introduced Adelaide for the second book, and she just as soon as she got on the page, she was just delightful. Because she suffers a lot of mishaps, and a lot of things that she has suffered actually have happened to me in real life. She was inspired by me.
I
Yes,
love it.
some of my more embarrassing adventures I gave to Adelaide,
You didn't have to tell anybody that that was you. You could just have it Adelaide's all embarrassing adventures, but no, they're
yes,
Jen's embarrassing
these are gems,
adventures.
because people ask me that all the time. They're like, "How do you come up with these things?" And I'm like, "You would be just amazed at how many things have actually happened to me." So that's why. So when I got to her story, I knew exactly where she was going, and I knew the opening scene. And I'll just say a little bit about that because that was inspired by me.
Mhm.
And it's not like a big spoiler because it's the opening paragraph. So as soon as you open up the book, you're going to understand what happens to poor Adelaide. She is walking across the receiving room she's at an intimate ball for 200 people. It's actually like a dinner ball, and 200 was considered small within the
Mhm.
400. And and it is actually before the main season for New York high society. They're called the 400, starts in January. Well, this is
So why
before.
why are they called the 400?
Oh, so they are called the 400 because It was very snobbish, and so right after
Mm.
the Civil War, so the Gilded Age starts pretty much after the Civil War, and it runs to about the turn of the century. Although think my personal opinion is it runs a little bit longer, almost up
Right.
until when the income tax happened, and then everybody had to pay for these monstrosities. I mean, they would have like 5 residents, and they didn't pay income tax on them. And so what happened was New York City started to see an influx of what they called the Nouveau Riche, and the
Mm.
Nouveau Riche it was first generation money. So
Mhm.
you would see like it's like the Vanderbilt family moved in. So the Commodore Vanderbilt, and that's actually not, well, it is kind of accurate. So he makes all of this money, but he was considered uncouth. And there were a bunch of people like him who were coming into New York City. So the old New Yorkers, they were called Knickerbockers. And they were there from the time New York was New Amsterdam. And so they decided something had to be done because they had all these interlopers coming into the city, and they wanted to join, and they wanted to be, with the Academy of Music is where they had, their operas and everything, and they wanted to get boxes there. And no, something had to be done. So Carolyn Astor got together. Now Carolyn Astor was from a Knickerbocker family, and she had married William Backhouse Astor, and so she rearranged the rules, and she said as long as the money was 3 generations, then it was okay, you could
Oh.
marry into that. So her husband got her high prestigious society position, and she got a lot of his money. She had money herself, but she got even more money. So she got together with Ward McAllister, a very interesting gentleman who was very snobby, and he has his own book. It's called Society as I Have Found It, and you can still get a copy today. They've redone that, the
Yeah.
historical significant ones you can buy. So I did buy one of those. So it's really dry, but fascinating. But I had to read that one out loud because it was like, ooh. So they got together and they created rules and who could come into society and who could not. And so Ward made this comment that there were only about 400 families who were worthy, or 400 people who were worthy of being
Mm.
in society. And so that's how the New York 400 came about. But it also was Carolyn Astor still owned a brownstone um, at the other end of Fifth Avenue from where the Vanderbilts built their beautiful mansions. And in this brownstone, her ballroom could only fit 400 people.
Oh, okay.
So
Only.
that's really how it came
Yeah.
about. And then years later, so we're talking you're moving into like the 1880s. And some reporter found it, they kept pressing Ward for a list of these 400. So
Mm.
Ward gave him a list, and it's not 400, it's short, and there's a couple people who are mentioned more than once, and it's just, so there was never really
The 400.
a 400, to tell you the truth, but that's what the name comes from.
Oh,
So
so cool. Okay. Sorry to interrupt you, but that's so fascinating. I'm so fascinated.
and it's interesting because I don't remember in school learning about the Gilded Age. I had
Mhm.
never heard that term before. The Industrial Revolution, maybe a little bit,
Mhm.
but when I first got into the Gilded Age to write, I had read this book. Consuela and Alva Vanderbilt have a book out. It's a book about them. So I read that, and it was Alva Vanderbilt. So for her to break into New York high society, because Mrs. Astor was like, no. You're
Yeah.
not getting into society. So, but Alva was really determined. She was from a family that was from down south, and they pretty much lost all of their money. And she set her sights on a Vanderbilt, and she captured him like within a couple months and married him. And she was determined because by
Mm.
this time they were third generation from the original wealth, and she was going to get into there. So she decided to hold this ball, and she held it in March, which is actually past when the normal New York season is. Um, and it was a costume ball, and everybody wanted to go because she built this huge mansion. Was it 660 Fifth Avenue? 66 something. Um, and everybody wanted to see it because it was the architect was Richard Morris Hunt. He was like the architect of choice those days, and it was just a glorious home. Well, so Carolyn had a daughter, Carrie, and you can see this on that show called the Gilded Age. It's on HBO now.
Okay.
So So Carrie was practicing the Star Quadrille to perform and you practice those at this thing called the Family Circle Dance class. And then they would practice for a long time. They were very elaborate quadrilles. And well, then Alva played her card because she said, well, oh my goodness, Carrie, I'm so sorry, but I cannot invite you to my ball because your mother has never paid a call on me. And that was the thing. It was Carolyn
Mm,
Astor's rule that she had to pay a call on you. And she wouldn't even go and visit. She would just have her carriage go up and they would deliver a calling card, and that was considered calling her. She'd never done that with Alva Vanderbilt. So Alva forced her hand. The story has it that Carolyn had her driver drive up the carriage and then deliver this card. And then Alva was basically considered accepted into New York high society, and then she could invite the Astors to her ball.
oh wow.
There you go. So fascinating stuff.
Well, and so
Fascinating.
now you're like, okay, we need some matchmakers set in this time period with all this
Yes.
high society, everything's happening, and everyone knows how you're supposed to act. But
Yes.
then the stories they kind of just
They go
unexpected
off
things
on their own.
happen.
So, like, and I have been asked a lot, like, were there really matchmakers? And there were matchmakers.
Mhm.
Mamie Paget, I believe her name was. She was somewhat wealthy. She probably only had
Mhm.
like $1 million back then. And so she went off to England and she was known. She was the one who was matchmaking all of the American heiresses. She was
Mhm.
matching them up to the aristocracy. And so I had read about her. So that was also in that box. Like,
Yeah.
don't forget about her. And then they had other matchmakers, that would be on the sidelines, the old society matrons and stuff. But I didn't want to make a matchmaking series about, with the older,
Yeah.
typical matchmaker. So that's why it just kind of went off the rails.
But that's the fun part about it, and I mean, that's the fun part of your stories. They're so whimsical and fun and unexpected that I mean, you said, they're going off the rails, so, like, they're not exactly true to history, but you have the era, you have the society, you have what was happening, and then you just have these fun, interesting characters interacting, and so I love how you're able to take this kind of very formal society and add that whimsy and that fun and these interesting characters all in your books.
Well, thank you. That's kind of my goal. And you never
Yeah,
know where they're gonna, you don't know where they're gonna go.
yeah.
It's just once they get on that page, and yeah, Adelaide did not give me any troubles at all. It was one of the easiest books to write.
Oh, good.
Thank you, Adelaide.
And look at this cover. I
Isn't that
mean, it is
pretty? And
so
so in the
amazing.
background of the cover is that is Delmonico's, which was where they used to hold the Patriarch Ball. And the Patriarch
Okay.
Ball happened in January every year. And it had rules as well. And
Mhm.
so Adelaide does go to, so she you open up the book and she suffered this mishap, and this is like, her bazillionth mishap that she's had, and society decides that that's it. Like,
Yeah.
she's basically a confirmed spinster, and she's decided she's fine with being a spinster. She's got like just a ton of cats that she surrounds herself with, and she's an avid reader, and she thinks, okay, she would be fine, just like retreating somewhere with all of her cats in her books, and she can be that crazy cat lady. And then she runs into Gideon Abbott, and as she's trying to make a discreet exit from the opening scene, she just wants a place to lay low for a while and read her book, is what she really wants to do, and get away from the thing. And so she encounters Gideon, and Gideon has gotten himself in a bit of a pickle. And he is a former intelligence agent with the Naval Academy. And so, what is he doing? What kind of pickle, right? And Adelaide helps him out of this pickle. And in so doing, she gets herself totally, it's called being given the cut direct from society. It's like, now
Mm.
they've really had it with her, because not only does she open up this chapter with this outlandish scene, like 2 chapters later, there's even a more outlandish scene, and that's it. So then Gideon decides he's going to prevail upon his very good friend Camilla Pierpont, who is she was deemed an incomparable, and you will meet her again. So she shows up a lot in
Oh,
this book.
good.
Right?
Okay. Yeah.
So she is the most proper of ladies, and she was deemed an incomparable as soon as she made her debut. But she has vowed to never marry. No, she's not going to marry because she might have suffered a broken heart from a
Mm.
scoundrel. So Gideon prevails upon her. She actually thought she was going to retire from matchmaking. So he gets Camilla to not try to make a match for Adelaide, but to take her in hand. And his first goal, he convinces Camilla, is they are going to turn her into a diamond of the first water. And it just kind of goes from there.
Yeah.
So
I just love because you're like, I know we've talked before, but I would love for you to talk about it again. Like when they're on when you're writing, it's like they just go off. Like the characters just start doing these things, and you're like, wait, what are you doing? Where are you going? Why are you doing that? Which I think is so fascinating. So talk a little about that in your writing process because it's just
so
so fun to see
yeah, so
that they just
I
take over.
So I'm not a complete pantser, which is where I just sit down and I write whatever comes to mind. I always know how a story begins and I always know how it ends. I have a vague idea of what goes on between those two
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah.
So then I plan out 5 chapters, and I used to try to plan out more, but yeah, those characters just take off. So like for instance, in this book, I ended up sometimes I get the mysteries start getting a little too convoluted. And I know that's going on, because I mean, if you're reading it, like by the time I get to like I don't get funny in my books until I get reached like the fifth time going through them, like my fifth edit before
Oh,
I even turn
really?
it in. I
Okay.
don't. I have like the bare bones, but then they really start talking, and then I start cutting out a lot of scenery, descriptions, things like that, and then it turns all conversation because they're really just doing that banter back and forth.
Mhm.
And you have to keep it fast because I do write romantic comedy, and so all that. That's why I love being like when I get to talk to like you, and you'll ask me about the history. I actually can tell the history because I can't put it in the book because it
Oh, yeah.
weighs it down.
Yeah.
So I end up cutting a lot of that. But yes, these characters will just take off, and then yes, then I'll realize that in this particular book I had two separate villains, and then I pulled back on one, and
Mm.
you'll meet that villain in a separate book. So because that was not my idea actually to have two villains. I'm pretty sure like they just showed up on the page and I'm like, well, okay, and then I just keep typing.
Yeah. I love that.
Yeah,
I love
love
that.
it until you have to delete it.
Oh, I
Yes,
know, and then you have to cut it, and then you have to rewrite. Oh,
yes, yes. So
I
but yeah,
love
I
it.
mean, all things considered, Adelaide did not cause me any trouble at all. I mean, I'm working on a book right now. It's a new series that I'm just starting. It's going to be the Merriweather Academy for Young Ladies.
Oh.
Yes, and it's not your typical. It's a relatively newly formed academy, and I so I've really just started. Well, I started about a month and a half ago, and the heroine is not cooperating at all. Like it took me 12 times to settle on a name. So she finally decided she was going to be an Annalise. So I'm like, this is great. On Friday, I woke up. I literally sit up in bed because I'm like, you know what? I'm just can't flesh her out very well. Like, I don't know what's going on here. She wanted to be Annalise, and the image in my mind is of her is kind of fuzzy. Um, So I sat up and I'm like, oh, she's not Annalise, she's Drusilla. So I don't know where Drusilla came from. It's not on any of my list of names I keep entire, like I have like a whole folder of names.
Yeah.
And so I went back there and looked because I'm like, where did I run across that name? No, she is not like Adelaide. Adelaide was delightful to write.
Isn't Drusilla one of the stepsisters from Cinderella?
Maybe, but I have maybe. Okay, maybe
I
it
think it
is.
is.
Well, okay, well, she's gonna be involved. Well, I say that now. I could start writing again, and it's like, are you not Priscilla? I don't know. Like, who are you? She's definitely not Annalise. And I kept misspelling Annalise. I kept transposing the vowels, and I've done it 4 different varieties of it. So could you imagine? Like even if I do a search and find, proofreaders are going to hate me
Yeah,
because I'm not
exactly.
going to catch them all. So I'm like, oh, this might not be the best name. So we'll see how that goes. It's
I
not
love
going
that.
well. It's a hot mess right now.
That's okay though. That's because you eventually, like, it's in a little pretty package, right?
Sure. Hmm. It will be
It will.
eventually.
It will
Not
be.
anytime soon.
I love that. Okay, so this just released today. Like today is
Yes.
release day. It's hitting the shelves. Although I know some people who have read early copies, and they're like, "We love it so much," and so they're so excited. Okay, so this is book two.
Yes.
Is how many books are in the series, and when is that next release? I mean, we're excited about this release, but we want to know what's next too.
So the third and final book, and you know what? I should have printed out the cover that I just released it. You can find that on like my Facebook page or
Okay.
Instagram, or it is absolutely beautiful. It is one of my favorite covers of all times. It's called
Ooh.
"Meeting Her Match." So it is Camilla Pierpont's book, and
Mm.
so with Camilla, she is so proper, and again, she's had her heart broken. And so I've been dying to set a book back in. So I grew up in St. Clairsville, Ohio, which is right across the border from Wheeling, West Virginia. And I've been dying to set a book in Wheeling and in
Mm.
Wheeling Island, which is a fascinating, it's just a small little island, but the history is just amazing there. And so I thought, you know what? That would be hilarious to take Camilla Pierpont, because she's very proper, and put her down in Wheeling. And so I started researching Wheeling. And even though I don't know, but like I grew up 12 miles away, I had no idea there was more income per capita in Wheeling, West Virginia during the Gilded Age than there was in New York City.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
yeah, who knew? And so then
Wow.
I got on. I love to interact, especially with like my Ohio Valley friends, and they are so good with this. So I just went on Facebook and I'm like, I'm thinking about taking one of my characters to Wheeling, and they just started with information. So this Janet Farron, if you're watching, hey Janet, um, she said, "Do you remember the nail factory?" And I'm like, "Nail factory?" And she's like, "Yeah, it was up past the hospital in Wheeling." And I'm like, "Was it?" Oh my goodness, this nail factory, they produce like basically almost all the nails in the entire country. It was like the nail
Oh,
manufacturing
wow.
hotspot of the country back then. So that's what the hero owns the nail factory. So and then they came up with like all local fare. Like there are these things called ramps. Have you ever heard of ramps?
I have not. Mm-mm.
Oh well, they grow in streams.
What?
They grow in streams, like down in the high valley, and they're kind of like onions. But then
Oh.
I found out that they are really, really smelly. And like you don't, back in the day, you would not eat ramps past Thursday because you don't want to be the stink in church.
Oh my goodness. No way.
Yeah, so it has ramps, and then the vernacular of speech is amazing down there. And I am familiar with some of that, but they would I had a lot of
Wow.
people would just tell me things that they're old aunts and memas.
I
I
love
you
that.
know so it yeah, so Camilla is in for quite the eye opener, but it is, and then I have a character. um I don't name any of my characters after people I know. It messes me up. I can't do it,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, but I have a friend from high school, John Nemedy. Every time I post something about, I'm looking for like your pull out your family tree. I need names. Just throw stuff at me. Let me see what sticks, right? Every time he's like, Jen, I'm still waiting to have a character named after me, and he always went by the name Nems. So the last time, so I'm writing this book, but one of the names wasn't working. Then I put that, and he shows up. I'm still waiting for that Nems character. Well, I had almost the entire book done. So I'm like, huh. So I had this one side character, and I'm like, you know what? I could change his name because I've already written him, so it's not going to be in my head.
Right.
So Nems, if anyone, when people read that book, Nems is now a one-legged carriage driver.
Oh my goodness.
And because I know him, and he said okay to it, but because I know him, I did give him back his teeth because at first the one-legged carriage didn't have teeth.
Oh my goodness. Okay, okay. Do you like talk to yourself when you're writing? Do you
I
like
do.
I could just
Yes.
picture that. Yeah.
Dude, can you just picture? I just sit here and and then and so normally my cattle dog would be in here with me around me. But if I'm talking to myself too much, it annoys her. So she leaves and then she goes and she sleeps in her closet. That's her safe. It's the weirdest thing ever. She has dog beds all over the place and she sleeps in the closet. And she'll go and hide in the closet because she doesn't want to listen to me. But
Yeah.
yeah, I do. And a lot of times I'm down in my she shed, but the reception is really bad there, so I
Yeah.
can't do a live down there.
Yeah. I can just picture you can almost do like a YouTube stream of you writing your books, talking, and just like, oh, well, I will give you back your teeth today. So you should be thankful for that.
Well, yeah, I had a high school reunion this summer that I went. Well, actually, it was in the fall. I went back to St. Clairsville, and so Nems was there, and that was the big thing. That he told everybody, Jen put me in her book, and then he's like, I'm the one-legged carriage driver, but she did give me back my teeth.
That is awesome. I love it. I love it.
Yes,
Oh, so fun. Okay, so delightful books. I love the humor. I love the interesting. I mean, the Gilded Age and just the setups and it's you will not figure everything out. Like the book is going to carry you along. You're not going to be able to figure out the plot, figure out the characters to do because Jen didn't even know everything that was going to happen when she was plotting it. Right. So I love that. It's always such a fun read. So this is the second one. You don't hold up the first one again. I think you had it there.
I did.
Yeah. Yay, they're so beautiful. They're so beautiful. And so then you said on your Facebook or on your social media, we can find the cover for book 3?
Yes, meeting her match.
I love it. I love it. So definitely go out, check these out. They're also on Audible. It released today, and because I was waiting for the Audible. Because I could fold laundry and listen to the stories at the same time. So Audible, on Kindle, on regular books. So go check it out. But Jen, where can people go to connect with you and find out more information about you and the books?
Well, you can always visit my website. That's just jenturano.com. But I do most of my interacting on Instagram, which is Jen Turano Author, and the same thing with Facebook, Jen Turano Author. And I would tell you to sign up for my newsletter, but as I told Trisha earlier, I'm having a bit of a snafu with that today. So seems like my account has been closed and it's locked. So I need to
You need to figure that out. She needs to
yes,
go figure this out right now.
we'll figure that out. It always happens on release. Well, actually, it happened yesterday. I had like 5 people contact me, and they're like, your page doesn't seem to be working. And I was like, oh no.
Mm.
So it's not.
It'll get figured out. So just put it on your to-do list for next week because she's gonna figure it out, and then you
Yes.
can sign up for the newsletter.
Yes. Just don't try to do it today because you're not going to be able to, but it'll get back up there eventually.
Oh, well, thank you, Jen, for being here. I just have so much fun whenever I talk to you and in your books too. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I always love being here.
Yay.